Good evening. There's football midweek this week, so they dragged us out of our beds from our busy work lives to come and talk to you about it. Apparently, with the best EPL fans in the land. Seriously, the best EPL fans in the land. It's always a pleasure to be joined. We've got Shay, Glenn, and Io back again. It's good to see Io again. But again, yeah, probably one of the best places you're going to get informed, educational discussion on the Premier League and a little bit beyond. And then I'm here too, just to spoil the atmos. Gentlemen, how are we all doing? It's been a while.
Doing good. It's been a minute. Not much happiness to be shared though.
I'm not going to talk about us. Let's look at what we'll talk about. We'll talk about what's happened this past weekend and then midweek games. We'll talk about what happened today and then what will happen tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit. We'll start with the offside change. The Arsene Wenger rule is apparently being trialed. We talk about that. We can talk about corners and several ideas for what to do about corners. Although deal with it, I think is probably the best way to do it. And then FA Cup weekend. That's when IO can go. Only kidding.
No, sure, I can do that.
Some snarly picks then as well. Big hello to BX Gunner. Greetings, everyone. Good to see you again, my friend. Let's do this. Let's look at what happened this past weekend on the scores. We will start because I haven't seen IO in a while, and the last time we saw IO, he didn't have too much happiness to talk about, but the monster is gone. He's packed his bags and he's off to Portugal. And United have beaten Crystal. But now I have to say, it's hard for me to give credit, obviously, and I'm sure vice versa. It's torturous to the soul to give credit to a Manchester United team. But the thing I like about Michael Carrick is he's just gone back to basics, hasn't he? He's done a good job of just getting right. We're playing 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1. Just go out and do what you do best in the position you tend to do it the best in. But talk us through that game and your thoughts on Michael Carrick and the job he's doing so far. Because if Keith Andrews is possibly contender for manager of the season, and I do not doubt that, Michael Carrick might have a shout in there as well, mightn't he?
All I want to say, I have to sing the song. It's Carrick, you almost think it's Paul Scholes. I have to sing the song. Let's start with the game against Palace. We didn't really play too well against Palace, to be honest. Especially the first half was pretty poor. I think it almost looked like we were the team that played midweek on Thursday, and Palace looked like the team that had the rest. So passes were sloppy. It was the first 30 minutes was very weird. But I think towards the end of that first half, and I think because a lot of it was very narrow in that game, and I think I probably figured that out. Like Palace was taking advantage of us on the wings with the wing back. So he switched it up, and you could see Bruno started pulling out wide, Cunha started pulling out wide. We started finding some chances here and there. I mean, of course, you considered really early in the game. Through, I think, sloppy defending from Lenny Euro. I think I was just poor bad defending from him. But apart from that, it didn't really cause us too much problems. But we didn't play well at all. We're just like playing really bad. But then second half comes, and right from the off, you could see a change. There was more intensity, and yeah, the penalty. Then we get the penalty and the red card, double jeopardy. I think some people were like, "Oh, maybe it's a red card, but we should have been a penalty because the foul started outside the box." Like, guys, there's no rule like that. I don't know where people invented that rule. He held him continuously into the box, and the key thing was he was still holding him while he fell in the box. So it was a penalty, So after that, of course, I think we dominated the game. I feel like we're a bit wasteful in chances. We should have scored more goals. But that game was mostly all about Bruno and Šeško. Bruno just took over the game and spraying passes, dropped to DM, dropped to the wing, was playing the 7, and I think, low-key, I think Bruno is a low-key shout for player of the year, in my opinion, anyway. Maybe I'm biased.
Of course, Eric. And you wouldn't have it any other way. Now, let me ask you this. We'll get on to things like the thing about it's not the thing about the penalty is not so much where the foul started or ended. It's that in any other game that weekend, a ref looking at an exact similar situation will give a different call, and that's what we're all kind of complaining about as supporters, isn't it? There's no consistency to it. A different ref in that same game would call a free kick outside the box. My thought on it was, what the hell is the player doing that for in the first place? Then you don't give penalties away. It just seems logical to me. Don't put your hand on a player near the box. Don't risk a penalty. But that's the frustration, isn't it? I mean, you could have that same situation now in your next game tomorrow, I believe, and get nothing out of it, or you get a free kick instead of a. There's a real lack of a straight line through the rules, the laws of the season, isn't there?
Yeah, it happened. I think the West Ham game, something similar, maybe not exactly, when Bomo was brought down and they did not even give a free kick. It was not even a free kick, So, and it was the last one. So yeah.
Now, what is your take on Carrick's performance? Is it a case, do you think, that Ruben Amorim was so bad that they could have put me in charge and there would have been a big bounce back? Or is Carrick actually actively doing things that you look at and you go, do you know what? I wouldn't mind if he gets the job at the end of the season.
I think it's a bit of both. I think Ruben Amorim was really bad in his man management. And I know I said it on here many, many times, because I feel like I say it every platform I go, people overrate the effect of tactics a lot. And I'm not saying bad tactics will always make a team bad, but your ability to communicate to players and tell them to put them in the right position and tell them to run for you and do the basic things is so critical. And I think Ruben Amorim was so stuck on the X's and the O's, and it is my way or the highway. Because this perfect example I wish I would tell people. Against Newcastle Boxing Day, I remember I was traveling to see my sister in Pennsylvania. I was watching that game on the phone. He changed it to a back four. He put, what's his name? Dogu as a right winger in that game. And it looked better. The players looked more comfortable. And 30 minutes to go, he went back to back three. And we were very lucky. Newcastle probably should have equalized or even won that game. They missed clear chances. He never went back to the back four again. I would never understand it. He saw something that was working, and he's like, nah. I want to play my way or the highway. And he went back to the back there. And I think the following game is when we dropped points against Wolves. It blew my mind when he went back to the back three. I'm like, why did you do that? You saw something working. So it was almost like a self-sabotage mission from Ruben Amorim, in my opinion, just from the day. You guys remember from last season, I was just complaining about him. Just from the get-go, when he started going for players, I'm like, this is not what you need to do. You are brought in halfway through the season. You don't need to try and rip everything up. Like, even if you're going to rip everyone in the summer, if you're going to sell whatever player, you still need them right now to get results. So it blew my mind. So I think that's this. But from Carrick's tactical point of view, I think he has seen the strength of the team, right? We don't have wingers. We have only one winger, and that's Ahmad. Everything we can do is narrow. All our good players like to come in. Mbeumo wants to invert. Cunha wants to invert. Bruno likes to go down the middle. So he put the players in their right position, and he quickly took advantage. And I think from the West Ham games, teams started figuring out that, United is not doing, because most of the good teams in the Premier League, they build to the wing, right? Arsenal goes to the wing. City, even though they play this narrow, but they always, and the reason why they do that is if you give up the ball, right? You don't give up big chances when you go to the wing. Liverpool, everybody kind of tries to build to the wing. And Carrick was like, nah, we're going to go to the middle. But West Ham figured that out. They clogged up the middle.
I think Carrick is subbed IOL. Either that or you hit the wrong lead. We'll get him back anyway. We'll get Io back in a bit. He's back. There we go. Carrick subbed out. Or Ruben Amorim there. I was going to
Ruben Amorim heard you.
I had my thoughts on cut off my internet. So I think tactically he put the players in the right position. I think also he seems to be a good manager. Regarding him getting the job long term, the reality is this: which big manager is going to come in and deal with Ratcliffe and Ineos and this new idea that every club, I know Chelsea is doing the same thing where, your job is to coach, we'll buy the players, you have no input in the players, right? Which Enrique is not going to want to deal with that. He's a manager that just won the treble twice in 2 different clubs, right? So I always tell United fans, be realistic and look at the situation in front of you. We need to rebuild. We need to build. If Carrick is the guy that's going to be able to work with these guys, the players that exist, because guys, I wish to remind people, no manager is going to come in and bring 20 players. The players that exist still need to play for him and play well and like him. The players that exist like him and play well. I think you let them rebuild. And if he hits his ceiling, like everybody's saying, like, oh, it's just vibes, this is Ole 2.0. He hits his ceiling. But more importantly, what is the most important is the recruitment. If the guys above can get the recruitment right, it looks like they've gotten some of the faults right. Might be short term, but they've kind of gotten it right. If they can get recruitment right in the weeks, in the midfield, fullbacks, wingers, if Carrick hits his ceiling, we will know very quickly. I think when a manager hits his ceiling, when you have good players like what we just saw with Ruben Amorim, it will show very quickly. I think it will.
That's why Peter Crouch never became a manager, because he'd be hitting ceilings all over the place because he's 6'10". Let's go back to the games here. Now, I want to talk about this one. Glenn, Burnley, Brentford, a highly entertaining game in the highlights, probably not highly entertaining for your nerves. But correct me if I'm wrong, this was the game. Kelleher was out because his missus had their first child, or at least had a child. So when I saw that it was 3-0 up and then it was getting back to 3-3, I was like, no, Kelleher can't be in goal for that. So I had to check it, and then sure enough, he wasn't even in the squad, and I had to go check on BBC. And a controversial moment at the end for a goal being disallowed for Burnley that would have made it 4-4. If your nerves have steadied themselves, if you've had a couple of whiskeys, a couple of Jamesons to balance everything out, talk me through that game for you.
Yeah, they've been steadied by a pretty dry 0-0 against Bournemouth earlier today, Macca, which was quite the polar opposite in terms of scoreline, if nothing else. And yeah, 3-0 up, everything's looking good, right? We kind of blew them away. We were just super good, right? Damsgaard had a game we knew he would. 2 goals and assist, header from a corner. That's not his typical method of scoring. Thiago on the score sheet again. His tally keeps creeping up. It's just incredible what he's been able to offer us. And then Kevin Schade manages to hook in the result of another Coyote long throw, which has caused chaos. We're strangely enough the team that scored the least corners in the league, which I find absolutely incredible. It took us till January to score from a corner, and that was just our second with Damsgaard's header. But everything's happy, right? 3-0 up. The thing that Burnley managed to do, I think, Mac, is they scored 2 of the best times in a football match to score, which is on the stroke of half-time and a minute after half-time, because that completely transforms the game, right? 3-1 gives the fans something to cheer and gives them just a little bit of motivation to come out for the second half. I mean, I wouldn't have thought it was any discredit to Burnley fans to leave when the third went in. I think they had every right to do that, to be perfectly honest. So you just keep the home team interested when it's 3-1 at half-time. And then Anthony, who was great, he's a really good player. I hope he stays in the Premier League next season. He's good. He gets a goal just after half-time. There's a Coyote own goal before half-time and then a Coyote deflection for the seconds. That was hard work. And then, a blink of an eye, 10 minutes later, Fleming, who was a real handful, he looks like a really proper player for them. He's just a good, strong player. He gets a goal. And suddenly you're just blinking, and like the game was done, dusted. I was just mentally completely done with the game because you're 3-0 up after 30 minutes. It's great. Happy days. Burnley don't have the quality, you assume, to get back into it. But this is why we love the Premier League, right, Macca? Because like teams can always come back. A game's never over till it's over. I would say 3-0, the team at the top of the form table to the team near the bottom of it, I think that's game over, right? You'd assume. It's not the case, and that's why we love this league. So credit to Burnley. I think they can feel pretty hard done by. They had a couple goals, I think, chalked off, I think, correctly. But, Damsgaard pops up again in the 93rd minute with a really tidy finish. And, cruelly for Burnley, they had a goal disallowed, which would have put them 4-3 up, which would have been really, really, really crazy. You're talking game of the season then. And then, even more cruelly, they had a 90 plus 6th, 7th equalizer ruled out from veteran striker Ashley Barnes, who I think did handle it. It's a tricky one, right? But I do think it touched his arm and he scored. But you know what? It's crazy, Macca, right? To say 3-0 up at Burnley, and I think we we managed to escape with 3 points because Burnley showed that they're still fighting for Scott Parker. They showed that they've still got some quality in their squad. I think they put in a massive shift. It showed their mentality was still like an elite league mentality to go from 3-0 down to 3-3 when you're almost already relegated. Yeah, I was impressed by Burnley's comeback, and I was just so delighted to come away with 3 points because I think we really rode our luck, just like we did at the Vitality Stadium today. We rode our luck, which we might talk about in a bit, to get a 0-0. That's genuinely 4 points away from home when it could have been 1 in the last 3 days. So very, very happy.
Now, in terms of Keith Andrews there, it's funny you say that you don't score many corners because he was the set piece coach before he became the full-time manager. And a little bit, I'm going to say, because, I always have a thing against Scott Parker, England's brave Scotty Parker. But in tune with what Io said about Carrick, both Keith Andrews, you can see the Brentford players love playing for Keith Andrews. Like, there's a great relationship there, and they love playing for Thomas Frank. I'm not going to say that they didn't. That was a clear, good relationship there as well. But Burnley technically not the best team in the league in terms of fundamentals, maybe. But as he said, they're not. It's not for want of trying. They're still clearly doing it for Scott Parker. The United players are clearly stepping up their game for Michael Carrick. It is a point, isn't it, that we get the Ruben Amorims. We're kind of getting a little bit. My opinion is we're kind of getting a little bit of it with Arne Slot at Liverpool. We got it with Enzo Maresca at Chelsea, maybe a little bit with Rosignol, but we're not seeing it right now because he's too early into it. But systems managers who kind of forget the human part, because I'd even say, Shay, Unai Emery has a good relationship with the Aston Villa players. He may be a different style, but you got to get the players on side, don't you? It doesn't matter how many theories you have, how many presentations you have, how many coaching badges you have, and coaching courses you've done. If you don't get the players on side, it's all a lot of crap, really, isn't it?
Definitely. And I think that's been shown by the giant contract Thiago signed, right? He is going to be the player that's obviously going to be most in demand from us in the summer, especially if he leads the line or plays any role for Brazil at the World Cup, which I think they'd be foolish not to put him on the plane. Like, it would be ridiculous not to. So his stock, I feel, Mac, is only going to rise. So what does it say about the culture at Brentford, the relationship with Keith Andrews, the relationship with the fans, that Thiago, who could get the biggest money move of his career, right? His history is incredible, right? Incredibly hardworking guy, very tough, upbringing in Brazil, worked hard as a laborer all his life, worked incredibly hard as a forward, right? He is the definition of like just a workhorse up front. But what's good about him, Macca, is he can finish too. That's why he's I think he's close to a complete forward. And I don't often say that. As close to Ivan Toney as I think I was ever hoping to see again at Brentford in this Premier League era. But I think Thiago signing that long contract, it's just security for him, but more importantly for us, right? For the club, that kind of relationship, I think, is reflected in our star player. We could be offered, I don't know, 70 million for him in a couple of months, but he was willing to say, team first, you're going to have to buy me out of a massive contract, right? That's huge for the club. And that, to me, just completely encapsulates this relationship and this culture that Keith Andrews has built, right? Mikkel Damsgaard, right, Mac? He's a player that's been, drops a bit harsh, but he's been rotated out of the team due to a mixture of a couple of knocks, but mainly he just simply wasn't playing very well. He was our key player last season, right? I think he was one of the best cams in the division last season. Absolutely stand by that. He's just been a bit off the boil. What does it say about Andrews' management and his relationship with Damsgaard that he can rotate him out of the team? He hasn't played much for us in weeks and weeks now. Fans are just confused about it. He can come back into the team, deliver a man-of-the-match performance, 2 goals and assist, and once again have the faith and the backing of Andrews. You know what I mean? I think he's built such a level of trust that players know, even if they're not playing, that they are part of the plans, right? I think he's got the man management skills down really well. And you can see it on the touchline, right? Jumping on Henderson's back when we equalized or got the winner a couple of weeks ago, right? He is just so fired up. And he just feels like a person you'd want to sit down and get a beer with, or you'd want to talk about Brentford with. You can't say that about every manager. Thomas Frank, I'd absolutely say that about too. But you don't get that relationship with fans and managers very often. I would love to hang out with this guy and just talk Brentford, right? talk about whatever. Like, he has that personality that's quite infectious. Might be his nationality, Macca, who knows? But we like him a lot. So
It's Guinness.
It's the Guinness, yeah.
Guinness.
Couple Guinnesses on the touchline. But yeah, no, we're buzzing. And as I said, to get 4 points from what became two extremely tricky fixtures in the last couple of days is huge away from home.
Not to sidetrack. Sorry, Maka. Just a quick question to Glenn. From outside looking in, right? Is the real genius in Brentford the owner, the Matthew Bainham? In the sense, he's been able to identify two managers now in a row who are like good man managers, but more importantly, the players, especially strikers. You guys have sold forward since I remember Watkins, Ivan Toney, and every year you replace them with someone sometimes that's good, sometimes even better. It's just a question from outside looking in. That's something I've just been paying attention to. Like,
it's a very data-driven philosophy, isn't it, Glenn?
Absolutely. We're the kind of OG Moneyball applied to English football, right? We are the kind of pioneers of that. And other clubs, like Brighton stand out as another example. But they've we've done this the last couple of years. Brighton, they sold all their players to Chelsea. Respect, huge profit. But it feels like that project is maybe stagnating or is just inconsistent, whereas our project has just caught fire. And you're right, the fact that you can lose all the key players, you can lose the manager, that to me shows that the foundations at Brentford is stronger than near any other club. And you look at maybe someone like Spurs, where Frank has gone to, and it does sound like him and his team were a little bit surprised about the way things were run at Spurs, right? It was a bit of a mess behind the scenes. It was obviously a bit of a mess on the pitch. And I don't want to say Frank took it for granted in any way, but I do wonder if the culture at Brentford was obviously normalized by Frank, right? It was normalized with him there. He embodied it. It was just so different. It was such a grating contrast at Spurs. I think for me, again, that really underlined how special the Brentford project is. And Io, you're right. Like, that does, unlike many workplaces where it's kind of the opposite, the culture comes from, the entry-level employees, right? Or the lowest paid employees. That's where the culture of most of my workplaces have come from. Brentford's really interesting because it is from the top, right? It is the ownership. It is Phil Giles, the director of football, in terms of recruitment, in terms of environment, in terms of the relationship with the fans. Like, yeah, I am really proud to support Brentford. And I think many, many other fans who support Premier League teams are incredibly jealous because you're right. We can pick our recruitment is better than most other clubs. Our culture is better than most other clubs. And you're seeing the fruition of that in our position in the league. I'm never going to say we're one of the best teams in the league, or we necessarily play the best football always, because we don't. But I do think you'll find it hard. I'd challenge anyone to find a club in the Premier League.
Pound for pound, I think Brentford is pound for pound. Like when you factor in amount spent, I think Brentford is the best run club.
It seems like everything's joined up. That's what we were hoping to get with FSG. We kind of maybe got a few years under Klopp, but like it seems like maybe without having the pressure of having to win a trophy every single year, it allows a club to be joined up because the mission's a little bit less pressured and your goals are a little bit more concrete. And you don't have to chop and change managers unless something's disastrously happening, like losing to Wolves the last minute at the last kick, something like that. Speaking of which, Wolves Villa. Shay, I know you're paying. Talk me through that. Now, I will say this on our Discord channel during the game. I said whatever you can say about Liverpool and the Liverpool players' performance today, etc. One thing is for sure, that Rob Edwards sent that Wolves team out with a plan, and every single player on that Wolves team believed in that plan, no matter how attritional and no matter how defensive and uncreative it was. The Wolves players they know that if they follow what he says, they're not going to get out of relegation unless there's some miracles that are going to happen for them. But they can go into the Championship feeling like it's not going to be a long stay in there. Did you feel that when Wolves played Villa?
Oh, for sure, because even just leading up to that, we have been looking abysmal. The midfield is completely lost, missing out on Tillmans, John McGinn, and Boubacar has definitely put a damper in the form that we had. Obviously, at the beginning of the season, we talked about it. We cannot score goals, and Ollie Watkins may be having the worst season of his career, to the fact that I think Villa fans are truly done with him at this point because you can tell he's, kind of forced out John Duran because he threw a temper tantrum. We bring in Tammy, and he's still kind of sulking around, which has always been his personality. But that Wolves match, even when they put the team out, I can see the frustration on the fans of Emery just making the same selection. Like, he's kind of going back to his days at Arsenal where he just kind of sticks with them. And I get you got to play. This is the best players we have. But you bring in Tammy, let him start. If he doesn't do well for the first 70 minutes, then you bring on Ollie. He may give him a kick up the ass and he actually will score a goal or do something. And when you see that team that got put out against Wolves, we were going in there like, well, you should beat them just because it's Wolves. They haven't done well. And they played maybe one of the worst games that Villa played in a while, to the fact that Konsa was about to go fight the away fans. And, that's the ultimate no-no in English football. You don't argue with the away fans that travel to support you. But, where's the point that they hold themselves accountable? Like how we were talking about Keith Andrews, the players obviously like playing for Emery, but they have to step up and they need to realize you're the ones on the pitch. You have to make the difference. Emery can't go out there and kick the ball with you. But it's been bad. And then you see Wolves, which we've talked about, like, we thought that they may not win a game, and here they are catching a little bit of fire, and then they beat us and then beat you today, which is crazy. Like, it's a massive 6 points for them. And like I said, they may not escape relegation, but they're at least going down swinging. And now I think they've put the league on notice in the sense of, hey, this is not going to be the team that everybody can just roll over that they all thought is an easy 3 points. They've showed that they're going to at least go down fighting. And how you said, they're going to attack the championship with a little bit more effort if they keep everybody. I do have a feeling they'll probably lose about 2 or 3 players. And they already lost their main striker halfway through the season when everyone took Crystal Palace. But if anything, it made them play a little bit different because they have to adjust to the few players that they've lost. But it's bad. I don't know. I'm about ready for Ollie Watkins to leave. If you want him back, Glenn, you can have him free of charge. I don't know. I don't think he's going to command a very big price. But it's just frustrating because, like we've said, he's England's number 2 at this point and hey, you're playing in the top flight. But he's not proven that he deserves to go to the World Cup this year, and he has nobody else but to blame. So it's been frustrating. And then they're coming back. So, of course, we thought we were in the clear of third, and here we are. Now we're fighting Manchester United. So I love that so much.
Let's look at just the rest of the weekend. Arsenal, Chelsea, again, set piece FC and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk a little bit about the kind of legalities of what happens at corners these days. But I think Pep Guardiola made a good point. It wasn't about Arsenal. It was about Arne Slot complaining about how football is being taken over by how many minutes are wasted on corners, etc. But Pep made a good point. And it's a point I made months ago, which means I'm obviously as good as Pep Guardiola. So we can all get that straight right here now. But basically he said it's up to other teams to adapt. And it really is, isn't it? I mean, we can complain about it. We can figure out rules to make it different. But correct me if I'm wrong, lads, if you've been watching. I know you're very knowledgeable supporters, so you've been watching the game a long, long time. There was a time when we maybe put 1 or 2 players out on corners, almost like a mini wall to kind of put the delivery off. And there was a time when we put players on the posts to prevent near post and back post goals from slipping in. And we stopped doing that a good few years ago to the extent that, like easy goals are being scored at the near and the front post because of that. Everything in tactics in football, as far as I'm concerned, is cyclical. Are we going to see, hopefully not real changes? I'm sick of them trying to legislate tactics out of the game. Like, let the game sort itself out. But are we going to see a return to sending a player out to stand in front of the corner 10 yards off? Are we going to see a return to fullbacks guarding the inside of the inside of both posts? Are we going to see more of what Maresca and it was Keith Andrews did it? Sending players running as soon as the corner gets taken, so that if the corner fails, you're already under pressure because 3 players are running towards their own goal. Then, I mean, if Pep's right, if managers are stop thinking about stupid systems and start thinking about solving problems, Arsenal and any team that's trying to use these tactics, they're going to get found out, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I think we've talked about it before. It's just how the game has changed. Where now they're adopting the American style of coaching, where you have position coaches. And I feel like whenever they started introducing set piece coaches, like I said, we went from the basics. Because growing up, when we all played soccer, you always had a man on the post, on the front and the back, and always covering it. Like I said, with the wall, that would just, kind of if they told you to do it. And like I said, they've stopped doing that. They're all fighting in the middle, and then you leave that back post open. To the fact that, it was a couple years ago when we had Douglas Luiz kept scoring from the corner because those players are good enough to where they can bend the ball in. They know nobody's going to be there to hit that position. And for the goalie to make that save, it's going to take a crazy amount of athletic ability to do it. But I think as soon as one of these position coaches just kind of says it hey, let's go back to the basics. And then they'll be like, oh, he reinvented the wheel. No, he didn't. They just went back to the normal stuff. It's hey, two people, one's on the front post, one's on the back, and that's it. And all these goals will probably stop. But it's just going to take one of them to finally just say, hey, let's stop doing all this fancy stuff.
Or for a manager to fire their set piece coach.
Or fire the set piece coach.
Do what they would have done years ago anyway.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But watch, it's going to happen. Some tactical coach is going to be oh, we came up with this great idea. What? We put somebody back on the post. And everybody's just going to – all the pundits are oh, my God, he's a genius. And we're there's hours of tape of people doing this before.
Ben and Shay's right. And I said this on one of the Thursday podcasts. There seems to be almost a rabbit-like proliferation of people on the bench that are not players at games now. There's a point, even with the data people, as much as I like the idea of data in football, where people have to justify their positions almost, don't they? So they have to produce something that says, okay, this is what I'm getting paid for. So they almost have to complicate it, don't they? Because if you don't complicate, if it's the old school, like Liverpool, just back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, when they dominated everything, the coaching staff was the same. They literally had a book where they said, well, what did we do on October 7th last year? Okay, we'll do that same thing this year. So the coaches were really more advisors almost. They didn't have to justify their positions because they just did the same thing all the time. But that was the simplicity of it. It's almost like the more specialist coaches are going to get, the more complex things are going to unnecessarily become. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, you can see that. You get this kind of growing bureaucracy, right, with clubs all across the league now in various different parts, right, whether that's kind of medical, nutrition, tactical, and for some of these things, it makes a lot of sense, right? You want to keep your best players fit for as long as possible. You want your players to be eating as well as possible, right? You want to build a culture, right? You probably want to have a couple people, you would hope, around the club who can talk about mental health or can help players get adjusted, right? These are specialist positions that are being developed that I think there's a lot of need for, and I think you're going to see the fruits of that, right? General care, player care, I think, is a part of the club that should be growing for a load of different reasons. But when you get into the tactics, and you're right, Maka, when you cut to a bench in a Premier League game, more often than not, there's the manager, there's the assistant, or if it's Jason Tyndall, there's the assistant, then there's the manager.
And then the assistant to the assistant. Assistant to the manager.
Exactly. But behind them, there is about 5 people with tablets in their hands, right? It's like a comedy sketch. You got all these people logged into all these computers and stuff, waving around these books and tablets. And sure, I'm sure a lot of them are doing some really good in real-time work, but I think that is a fair point that you're kind of making, Maka, that when all said and done, are you overcomplicating the basics because there's almost like this hyper specialization, right? Every single thing is going to be really deconstructed and really magnified and then really, really overcomplicated. I'm curious from a player perspective, right, Maka? I'll be really curious to know, is there an overwhelming amount of information, especially around corners, right? What does the communication look like with this stuff? Because clearly for some teams, it's not working. Clearly the kind of tactics that clubs like Arsenal can kind of, bully their way around teams that can still be successful. So something's not working. But yeah, I do think I think zonal marking is this kind of metaphor, I think, for like contemporary tactics, right? I think a lot of people have a lot of problems with the idea of zonal marking, some with good reason. It looks really silly when it goes wrong. And you almost want to say, everybody grab a player, the tallest player grabs the tallest player, don't make a substitution before a corner. And honestly, when I'm in goal on Sundays, stick a player on the post. And I mean, what more do you need to do? Obviously, that's kind of crude in some regards because that's not matching the tactical plans of the attacking team, right? And if it was that simple, we'd all just do that and no one would ever score from corners. But I do think there's a case to be made that it is like, yeah, it's becoming too complicated. And yeah, just aesthetically, corners are just a mess this season. Like the amount of grappling and grabbing and throwing and physicality. Aesthetically, it looks absolutely terrible. Like it just doesn't look good. And we don't just play the sport for aesthetic reasons, but like it's getting silly. It really looks kind of farcical, a lot of corners these days. So I think there's a point to be made about it just being overcomplicated and just getting completely messy.
Yeah, there is a statistical analysis, like one of the first ones, in fact, but it's proven much like I know people don't like on the aesthetic kind of thing don't like to admit this, but like the whole Charles Hughes and Charles Reap statistical study of goals being scored in less than 5 passes has continued to be proven to be true year on year out. But one of them is that the game is essentially 50% chance and 50% skill. And we're seeing that in the corners, really, isn't it? There's no real art to what's happening. It's literally just we're going to put it in the mixer, cause a bit of ultra violence and chaos, and then one person is going to be planned to get on the end of this, and they'll reap the benefits. And that's like that's what we're really seeing, isn't it? We're really seeing the chaos of the game, the chaos that Jurgen Klopp's whole philosophy thrives on. Organizing around the chaos. But Arsenal especially, it's there's no, I mean, there's plans, there's assignments, but there's no real art to it, is there? It's literally, we're going to get it in there, and if we do our things right, somebody's going to get on the end of this boat.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one way to look at it. I think the other way, in the sense of the thing is the skill. You said 50% of the skill. I think a lot of why it's working for Arsenal, if I'm going to go to zero in on Arsenal, is they have Bukayo Saka and they have Declan Rice, right, on the set pieces consistently. And those guys are one of the best deliveries of the ball. And they also have Gabriel. Because when Gabriel's out injured, right, I saw someone online do like a stat. Arsenal effectiveness, it dropped considerably. Especially the period where Gabriel and Saka were both out injured. It dropped considerably when it was Odegaard taking set pieces and every other person, Madueke, it wasn't working. So I think the deliveries is the key part of why they're doing it, right? And I think the second part is, Arteta realized that his forward players are not the elite level, like, the City teams and Liverpool last season that won. He realized that very quickly. And he said what he has done is the only way I can compete consistently in this Premier League that's become so physical, so many good teams, so many good players everywhere. We are seeing what Wolves are doing. I'm going to take less risk, commit less players forward, and try to build through the wing. And I have good players one-on-one, whether it's Martinelli, Trossard, Saka, Madueke. They can win throw-ins or they can win corner kicks. And then I can control that situation. But in open play, I'm going to have 5, 6, 7 players behind the ball every time. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to be extremely difficult to break down. And that's essentially what he has done. Like if you think back at it, just flip it to like Liverpool, right? When Klopp first came, he wanted to do the gegen pressing, high press. But then he quickly realized, like, oh, I have 2 weapons in Robertson and Trent who can deliver a ball. Their crosses were immaculate. So I'm going to build my team where those 2 guys are going to be very high. And instead of what other teams are doing, like City, where all of their creativity was coming through the middle because they had like the best midfielders, my midfielders instead in Fabinho, Henderson and the other guy that went Wijnaldum are actually going to be like my defense in the sense they're going to their job is just to stop the ball and protect the back line. And I'm going to create through the wing. But you can see that like immediately those guys have faded away. Liverpool cannot play like that. Even if Klopp had continued, they cannot play like that. Like even Slot that used last season and was using Trent for like line breaking passes, he cannot do that this season. He can't. So, but the point I'm saying when I'm doing this comparison is like the player quality and skill thing is what drives all these decisions.
Yeah,
I know other people are trying to copy it, but when you look at the effectiveness, it's nowhere as close as Arsenal. Funny enough, Chelsea has scored a lot of set piece goals, and Manchester United is nowhere as close as those guys. It's not because they don't have the same players that those players have.
Yeah. Now let's look at the games today. Brentford draw. Glenn, Liverpool losing that. I mean, it was a horrible performance, but just lifeless. Like that. That's my one problem with Arnie Slot is I'll take losses if there's a plan that looks like it's trying to come together. Do you know, like with new players, etc., but there's no plan. Wolves had a plan. Bournemouth and Brentford, I like Areola. I think he's a very good coach. I think he's kind of got a little bit shafted, players being sold. But was this a situation, Glenn, where both sets of fans probably take the draw? Because if both teams are on form, it's almost a crapshoot then.
Yeah, I mean, before the game perhaps, but I mean, Bournemouth will feel very, very, very unlucky not to come away with the win. An offside goal. They hit the post twice from Tavernier. Kelleher made a really good stop at his near post to stop Tavernier again, who was a real handful.
It was just before half-time or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right on his. And this is the thing. You expect him to cover his near post, but those shots go in so often because he hit it. The replay from basically the goalkeeper's point of view, he like absolutely hits it so sweetly. Like he volleys it really well. So top save. That was Coyote ball watching again, actually. Really, really bad defending. But yeah, I think we got away with it. We didn't create very much. I think we had one shot on target. It was a good save by their keeper. It was a header from someone. I don't know, Van den Berg. It felt like it might be the ultimate a classic smash and grab at certain points when Bournemouth couldn't get a goal. And then again, we forced them into a save in the second half of the second part of the second half. But yeah, I feel really good that we got a point. We play an attacking team. I really thought we'd score. We scored 4 at Burnley. I guess I know they're different teams and different qualities, but I really did think we'd score. Right? We've got Dango, Schade, Damsgaard, Jensen, Thiago. That's 5, 2 cams, 2 wingers, and a central forward. Like you're going for goals there, and it just didn't really happen. Henderson looked a bit pissed off when he got subbed at 60 minutes, which was unlike him. He looked a little stroppy, and then he kicked off in the tunnel at the end because we had an issue, which was Alex Scott, who was brilliant for them, a really good player. I like him a lot. It was the classic. He went down with a head injury that probably wasn't a head injury, but you have to stop play then. And I get you have to stop play. I respect that a lot, but it's always frustrating to see it weaponized a bit by players. So that broke up our final attack of the game. And we had a bit of momentum final few minutes. Then it all kicked off in the tunnel. It got pretty aggy, actually. Loads of pushing and shoving and all that. But honestly, Macca, take a point. Bournemouth are a great team. They're a hard-working team. I like Brentford. I mean that in a very complimentary way. They have a lot of players like Christie, Tavernier, Scott. The core of that team is just like people who really care about Bournemouth. They're a club that are also, well managed on and off the field. Yeah. They've been stripped for parts, as we've said before. Their whole back four disappeared in the summer, but they have this incredible way of regenerating as well. It's amazing. Their the other fullback was super good with the bleach blonde hair, the Spaniard. Yeah, they're a good team. I respect that. I respect Bournemouth a lot. And they'll probably feel hard done by. They were the better team and they probably deserve to win. So from a Brentford perspective, happy days. Clean sheet for Kelleher. Happy days. Yeah, great to get 4 points from a possible 6 from 2 away fixtures. Never ever.
Derby, right? That's what we're calling.
What's that?
It was the hipster derby.
It was exactly.
Both clubs are like data-driven. Both clubs are like app owners. Totally. I think the Bournemouth owners too owns like a gambling database thing. Like very similar ownership.
Yeah, another well-run club. But yeah, good point. Happy days. Move on.
Let's look for tomorrow because Villa and Chelsea's a big game. That's a key game, in fact, for the top 5, top 6 race. There's maybe 6 teams in it. But we'll start with Newcastle and United there, because this really is, this is a tale of 2 managers. Eddie Howe's under a bit of pressure now this season, whereas Michael Carrick can do this. He can probably be the only manager in the league that could do his job with 0 pressure whatsoever. Even Keith Andrews, future manager this season, future Ireland manager as well, let's not be wrong about that, but even he might have a little bit of pressure now that he signed that long contract, I think, that keeps him at the club for a fair while, and hopefully he'll have a lot of success there. But Eddie Howe's kind of, the wheels are falling off the Eddie Howe train, aren't they, a little bit? And Newcastle fans maybe would be justified in having some questions. But what is your view going into this game? Going into Newcastle, a notoriously hard place to go for any team, and it hasn't always been kind to Manchester United.
Yeah, we've lost our last 3 games there in the league. So yes, we have a really bad recent record. I think the last time we won there was COVID times, if I remember, under Solskjaer. So yeah, we've had a really, really bad record at St. James Park. They will be fired up for it. They will be fired up for it. Like they always get fired up for United. They, in their head, I think they still have that 1996 rivalry. I don't know why they still think about that. It's been like donkey years ago. I have a Newcastle friend actually who's a close friend of mine, and I always like tease him every time, like, look, dude, we're not rivals. Why do you always think we're not rivals? And he always gets pissed when I say that. Like, I don't think about Newcastle. Like, I don't know why you guys always get up for United every time. They were fired up for it. I think the one advantage is they have Bruno Guimaraes still out, I think, to April. I think he's out to April. Hamstring injury. That's the person I always worry anytime we play them, because he gets like really fired up and like he becomes like a Perlu of all of a sudden. He becomes like the best player in the world every time we play them. So I'm happy he's not playing, but still I think they'll be fired up. It'll be a physical game. That's what they're going to try to make it, because that's what Newcastle like high pressing, make it a slugfest. But I think they're also weak mentally. So if we get the first goal, I can see us winning that game easily. Now, if they get the first goal, I think it's going to be a slugfest. The only concern I have is the injuries that we're picking up now. Like every match day, I think we lost Martinez the 2 games ago. We lost Shaw in the last game. And that kind of impacts a little bit how we play. We're already narrow as it is. So the only type of weak comes from our fullbacks. And losing Shaw means Mazraoui has to play. So it means we're going to become even more narrow. And Newcastle are a team that use their wings very well. They have good, like Lewis Hall, that's right on that side. Lewis Hall, Gordon. And I'm pretty sure Elanga has been really bad all season. I promise you he's going to be good tomorrow because he's playing Manchester United. So a lot of people have a lot to prove. I'll say I'll stay positive, and I think we'll win the game 2-1. But I will not be shocked if it ends like 1-1, 2-2. I'll not be shocked. I don't think they will beat us. I don't think so.
I mean, like Luke Shaw, to be fair, I mean, he offers width on the pitch on both sides just by standing on the pitch because he's so fat.
Don't fat shame. Don't do that.
I can do it. I only can. But let's look at this one. I mean, this is a big game for you, Shay, isn't it? You really need to get back on track here because it's a genuine 6-pointer at this point of the season, isn't it? You win this, you've pushed Chelsea back a little bit and solidify, I think, yourselves into the top 4 race with United. It becomes Chelsea, Liverpool fighting for the 5th spot then almost. But are you confident that could happen tomorrow?
I don't know. The way it's been going, I'm not very confident, to be honest with you, because I don't know what team he's going to put out. I hope he just has an epiphany tonight and it's like, you know what? Ollie, you're getting dropped. Put him on the bench and then play Matson instead of Luka Dean, because those two have just been abysmal. I don't know what happened to them. They went from, or especially Luka Dean, like he's played really well this whole season. And that Newcastle match where he just turned his ass to the side and let the ball go in, I was like, what are you doing? Did the same exact thing against Wolves. I was like, are you having an aneurysm? Like, what's going on over here? How do you forget to defend?
Maybe it's a Tonali pick.
I don't know what's happening, but he did basically the same thing twice, 2 games in a row, and still doesn't get dropped. And it's at the point where, like, Emery, you have to quit being stubborn and play Maatsen just to give you something different. I'm hoping Tammy gets to play because who wouldn't want to score against their club that basically got rid of him 2 times in a row now? So, he's going to obviously be up for it. So hopefully he gets to start. I would love for us to win, but just seeing how Chelsea played against that, or how they played against Arsenal, they're going to be the same way, scrappy. They don't have obviously their right back, left back that got sent off, so that could be a weakness. But it's not like we play with pace because Leon Bailey, for some reason, has lost all his speed that he had. And then hopefully maybe Jadon Sancho. Well, I guess no, Sancho probably. I guess I don't know what TV's on at this point, but I don't know. It's frustrating. I'm hoping that we at least get a draw.
No, he's still a United
I don't
player,
think we can score.
He's not
so he can play against against Chelsea, but I don't see where the goals are going to come from. So it could be a very boring 0-0 1-point match, or 1 point between the teams, or we'll get absolutely ran through, which could very well happen because there were some of the passes that I saw Chelsea put against Arsenal, and they had them on the back burner. And the way that the defense has been playing, it's not looking good. So Martinelli pick, I'm going against Villa. Like, watch us lose 2-0. It's going to end up happening.
I mean, like Rosenior's starting to come out with a fair few Brendan Rodgersisms, so maybe he'll confuse his own players with envelopes and whatnot before the game starts. Let's have a look at the table. Top of the table there for now. Arsenal top, but City hot on the heels there and play each other as well. It's getting tight there, but Villa winning tomorrow puts a nice bit of separation, and United would still have a game in hand on Liverpool then, and then Chelsea as well at that point. Brentford, fantastic there. Look, I don't think Brentford are dropping out of the top 10 unless there's a massive fallback, and then Everton up there. Moyes is a good coach, maybe not a good coach for a club like Man United or anybody that big, but the next level down, he certainly does a good job, and he earns his corn. And there, Wolves getting their 3rd win at the season against Liverpool. Absolutely shocking. Just a quick question, boys: are Spurs in danger? They really look like they could go down now, don't they? Igor Tudor does not look like he is the solution.
He's a disaster. He is. Gosh, he's giving Ralph Rangnick when he came in. For you guys, I texted my dad that. I said the day he was appointed.
Absolutely.
I texted my dad those exact words. I'm not convinced. That's the energy he's giving me. He's gone, no, fair play to Ralph. Yeah, he just went in and slated everyone. That's exactly what this guy is. It like a wrecking ball appointment? You get some guy in who's out of his depth by about 10 different levels and runs in and says, well, everyone sucks. What was his quote a couple of days ago? The defense is terrible, the midfield's worse, the forwards are worse, and no one's got a brain.
And he wants to play a back 3. We just saw how terrible he wants to play a back 3 midway through the season. We just saw United do that.
No, awful. No, I watched the Fulham Spurs game on Sunday, and they got back into it. I mean, Richarlison nabbed a goal, but yeah, they are. I feel the Premier League's all about momentum, right? It's always about momentum, whether it's the top or the bottom or the middle. You make a late run in mid-table, you end up in 7th. Same way, if you start sinking, and Wolves are going to give us a real masterclass in momentum with their run-in, which is completely straightforward, their fixtures. It's clearly a bridge too far. If they had another 5 points, they'd be right in this. But Spurs are giving us their own masterclass in how to set a season on fire, and they are just sinking like a stone. I would not be surprised at all if Tudor doesn't last till the end of the season, which would be hilarious. Because then you're getting Nottingham Forest levels of dysfunction. Then you're getting some real basket case clubs. If he didn't stay, I think there's buyer's remorse for him after 2 games because he's like, I don't know what to do. I loved his energy when he came and he said, we're never getting relegated, having not seen them play or train before. He watches them train and play for 3 days. He's like, yeah, this is a disaster.
We're getting relegated.
This is a disaster. It's just laughable. So yeah, to answer your question, Rankin, they are so in the relegation battle. I am way more convinced by the team spirit and unity at Forest or West Ham, or obviously Wolves. They've just let it slip. The way Burnley fought back from 3-0 down to push us all the way, and really they could have got away with a win. you don't see a Spurs team coming from 3-0 down. You see them going 5-0 down. That's the energy the Spurs team's giving. So I think they are absolutely in a relegation battle, and it makes them being in the Champions League still all the more laughable. Like, it is just one upside down kind of sport we watch for that to be the dynamic.
The only reason they will not, I just wanted to add, the only reason they will not get relegated is because other teams are going to help them. And just because this is the one season where, like you said, momentum, almost everybody has something to fight for. There's nobody really on the beach, for using that word. There's nobody on the beach. That's the only thing that's going to be their saving grace.
My question then, just before we go on to the next topic, and then we'll start wrapping everything up with the FA Cup. If Rob Edwards happens to pull the miracle of miracles off on the last day, gets Wolves into 2019 17th place with the last kick of a ball, is he manager of the season?
Yes,
I would say so.
I think you'd have to give it to him.
If you go on a little tear there, you have to. They were pitiful the whole first half of the season. So you come in and you win 5-6 games just to get there, then yes, absolutely.
The greatest comeback, I think.
Even if Arteta wins the whole bunch, I think Rob Edwards manager of the season.
Absolutely. At the same time, Aki, you've got the wonderful stat of how many games has Pereira won as manager this season for Wolves and Forest, and the answer is going to be 0, and it's going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. These appointments are incredible.
Somewhere in Holland, Frank de Boer goes, "Oh, thank God for that." Now let's move on to this thing here. You can throw in other rules here, but apparently the Arsene Wenger version of offside is going to be trialled in the Canadian Premier League, which usually is, I think, the kind of progress is usually they'll try in a kind of obscure league, then bring it into like a youth tournament, like a FIFA youth tournament, and then see how it goes. Now, my personal opinion is I prefer this version of offside because offside is supposed to prevent cherry picking, and that's all it's supposed to do. From the original version of it, we've become, as far as I'm concerned, way too almost like the biblical Pharisees. We know the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the law. You're not supposed to be called offside because your left toenail happens to be slightly ahead of the defender when the ball is kicked, but you are supposed to not be gaining an advantage by being in an offside position, and there's no more clear way of being in an advantageous position during an offside situation than daylight between you and the defender. My question to you boys is, what do you think of this potential rule? Does it improve offside? Does it clarify offside? Or is it going to be taken advantage of, as every rule change always ends up being, usually by Ruud van Nistelrooy?
I guess I'll go first. I think I like it. I mean, just like you, I personally like it. I think, of course, you're taking advantage in the sense that it's going to force teams to be more comfortable playing the high line now, because, that it is easier to coordinate offside trap. This way, it's way more easier, of course, because it will be very, very clear when the person is offside. Oh, am I thinking of this well? I think it's become harder to call it offside trap, actually, right? Because once it's too harder to call it offside trap, so it's going to make teams see deeper more. Yep. I think or we may see the return of the sweeper. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. See the sweeper.
Yeah.
They're going to.
Which I've been praying for decades. I love sweeper systems. But it will change aspects of the game, as pretty much, I think, if you look at it, with the exception of the elimination of the back pass for goalkeepers, offside rule changes are the ones that have changed tactics the most. But maybe, do you think, Shay and Glenn, if we do have that daylight rule come in, we might actually see the return of proper number 9s as a feature?
I think so. Kind of like how he's just saying, I think the high press will probably come to an end, or you just have to be very, very aware of your situation, because they're not going to sit there and play that. If the whole body doesn't count, then what's to say? Ollie Watkins, actually, I take that back. Hold on, let me backtrack. Let's bring in this new rule, because then Ollie Watkins may actually score 30 goals a season.
I was going to make that joke. I was going to say he's going to go on loan to Canada.
It was going in my head, then I realized, for Villa, it would be very beneficial. But for the overall game, I don't know. It'd be hit or miss just because, some of these guys are getting faster and faster. Same with defenders. So I don't think it would be taken advantage as much. But like Kyle, you said, I think you're going to have to sit back more and you're not going to sit as high because what's it going to take for just one guy to make a pass and you just book it? And we've seen plenty of times in matches over the season where barely, like literally the cuff of your shirt, they'll call it offline or offsides. And it's frustrating because what's to say the wind didn't affect that and that's how you're going to make that judge that call? It is a crazy thing to think about. But like how your point, I think the sweeper will come back and I think it'll just make it a little bit more interesting because we're going to see goals being scored from just crazy passes because they're going to try something different just to try to beat the line without being offside by,
If you look, the thing is though as well, if you look back at the 60s and the 70s games, where maybe more the 60s because the 70s was when the total football team brought actual pressing in. There's a video on YouTube you can see like the 1974 Dutch team, like literally all 11 players running after the guy with the ball. Like I love it. It's phenomenal. But if you look at those old games, because they had the offside rule was a little bit different then, and it wasn't as easy to catch a player offside. It opened teams out a little bit. It was almost a little bit more like man marking, and it created a bit more space. Maybe we might see the return of dribblers then in that case because it's not 1v3 anymore. It's 1v1 again. So it'd be interesting to see, won't it? It'd be interesting real to follow up on it, and maybe the Canadian Premier League are going to get like a ton of subscriptions to their games so you can all have a look and see what happens. But is it a good thing at least that we're trying to the powers that be are trying to figure out the offside law?
Definitely. I mean, it's so frustrating when these completely legitimate goals get chalked off, as Shay said, just these tiny percentages that you can't see with the naked eye, right? And it's really making there's merits to VAR. You see its absence. Was it the Villa game, wasn't it, Shay, the FA Cup game a couple of weeks ago, the notorious game with just abhorrent decision after abhorrent decision. So you do see a case for VAR, or you see the consequence of referees relying on it and it erodes their actual skill of refereeing. But clearly offside and VAR, the way it's governed at the minute, is just a disaster, and it just kills the momentum. It kills the atmosphere for fans. It kills the enjoyment. I want anything that's going to give us more goals, because would you prefer to watch a 0-0 or a 3-2? I think we'd all probably prefer to watch a 3-2. So, think about it tactically, as I was saying, it's quite interesting. Is the consequence going to be teams dropping deeper, which isn't necessarily a good thing for really free-flowing football? But honestly, like anything that stops, a player leaning forward and it being offside, it's just ridiculous. Or the shoulder, they keep trying to tinker with it right around the edges, but the fundamentals are still just really frustrating. So as you said, Maka, we should do a American Scouser live watch along of the first Canadian game to implement these rules. That'd be fun. That'd be so much fun. It's a 0-0 with no offsides the whole game, right?
Is it offside, eh? Was it a boot?
They don't have offsides and they still won't be able to score goals. Then you're just at this point, well, I don't know what to help you with.
And they're so polite, they'll probably say, oh, yes, I was offside, eh? Now, let me just bounce to one little thing that I heard proposed, which was the idea of putting, restrictions on who can get around the goalkeeper and corners. Maybe like nobody in the 6-yard box, or maybe you have to give like 2 or 3 yards around the keeper to solve what we were talking about earlier with teams like Arsenal. And we don't want to legislate the game too much, do we? It's supposed to be a player's game. It really should be up to the players to figure it out. But we can get into I remember when I was a kid. I cannot say I'm a huge NFL fan. I do like the game, though. I understand it because it's a lot like rugby and it's a lot like soccer in terms of its strategies and the fundamentals of them. But the rule book was like 117 pages long. There's only 17 laws of the game. We kind of really want to keep it to that, don't we? We kind of want the game to be the same at the top as it is for kids playing on the street with backpacks for goalposts. That's how it really should be, shouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I think our biggest issue, and we've talked about it multiple times, I think it's just the referees just need to train better. I mean, we don't need to add more rules to make it complicated. If anything, we just need them to go back and just learn the rules or have them get better training and learning of the game. Because, I mean, this year, the last couple of years, the refereeing has been abysmal. No matter what team that you support, there has not been good calls. And then the fact that they come back a week later said, oh, yeah, we effed up. And then that determines between either getting 3 points or you're splitting points or losing points. So I don't know if they need to make the justifications earlier or which I think this is the first season that the Premier League was actually have the mics or, the refs mic'd up to where they have to tell the fans their reasoning for it. Obviously, they're not going to be the fans will be happy at the time, but I think that has shown that they are trying to improve it. It's just you see how we were talking about the game against United, like, was it a penalty? Yes, no. Give him the fact of what he saw on the VAR wasn't really what he wanted to determine, but then they're the ones that are making the calls up in the video booth, kind of like how you're saying, Macca, you're letting an outside person make these calls versus the players on the field or the ref on the field.
Now we're going to lose Io in a little bit, so we're going to hop on to the tonight. Well, here's the FA Cup games. I was going to have the Tonali picks about the FA Cup games. Is your Tonali pick Premier League based, Io? Because I can go back to that one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. You would have to be awkward, wouldn't you, bloody United fans? Is for these games here?
Yes.
What is your Tonali pick?
Brighton, Arsenal, 2-2, a draw. I think Arsenal draw points at Brighton.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Yeah, I could see that. I think and then Brighton will be City's favorite club for the rest of the season if that happens. Right. So we don't want to keep you, Io. It was good to have you back, and it was great to see it. And then maybe if the offside law does change, United might actually win another trophy. I did say that. I did say it. Have a good one, big man. Let us get back to Glenn. Just before we go on to the FA Cup, do you have an opinion on that kind of legislating rules for corners and stuff like that? The throw-ins, that was another one. I think what's his name, Mark Clattenburg recommend, like his suggestion would be that to change the throw into the other team if they're taking more than 10 seconds to take it and stuff like that. Like, do we need to go that far with the rules, do you think, or is it a case if somebody's got to figure out a tactical way to sort it out?
Yeah, I think you're right that just the simplicity is why we love football, right? It's just a very, very stripped back, straightforward game at heart. And the more you do, all that really gives is the referee something else to think about, right? Which means, to Shay's point, it's like, all right, they're already juggling fouls, offsides, whatever else, like a million things going on, right? And you're just giving them another thing to be a distraction from like the ball in play. There's a couple, I do appreciate, right, Mac, and maybe speeding up, the goalkeeper should have maybe there are limitations on how long you're kind of holding onto the ball. That feeds into the same thing. But, I get it. Nobody wants the keeper to grab the ball, hold the ball, drop on the floor and kick it 40 seconds later. But yeah, there's all these kind of tinkerings and stuff. But I think, as Shay said, if we just get the basics right and just get the referees better training, better support, if the whole team, right, from VAR to the fourth official to the referees to the lines people, could all be a bit better quality with proper investment in their training and resources, like that is the thing that's going to actually make the game better. The offside rule, for sure, that should work. But as soon as you start just giving the referee more basically paperwork in game, it's just going to be another distraction. That's kind of how I'm feeling.
Maybe we'll see the return of the 6-step rule for goalkeepers instead of the 10-second release rule. You'll get that. Let's look at the FA Cup games for the weekend. It's the 5th round. Quarterfinals are next. Here we're going to wrap the Tonali picks into this for you guys, because my question is, there's some tasty games in there. Newcastle City's a tasty game. West Ham Brentford's a tasty game. Leeds United, Norwich. I'm saying it like the Americans now. This is ridiculous. Norwich looks like a tasty old school Division 1 championship game. But I'm not going to say Wolves Liverpool because we've seen tonight that could be a nightmare for me. But is there a cup set in there somewhere? Can Mansfield Town keep the dream going?
It's going to be the one that you didn't say just because the way Hollywood and Ryan Reynolds' magic will work, but Wrexham versus Chelsea will be the upset. You know,
I mean,
FX
I mean-
and Disney are just foaming at the mouth for that one.
I mean, they probably are. Netflix has the Wrexham show, don't they?
No, it's FX.
Hulu.
Or Hulu, yeah, Hulu
Hulu.
FX.
Who, yeah, they'll be foaming. But I've seen them play. They're not. I mean, they're not a technically City level team, but they're fairly fearless, aren't they? Like the coach, I can't remember the guy. It's a Phil Parkinson. It's not Phil Parkinson. It is,
Yep.
is it?
Still,
He doesn't care. Like, you know, he just goes for it. Like, I like that about him. A bit naive if you're in the Premier League, perhaps, but in an FA Cup 5th round game, 10 minutes to go, 0-0, you want a manager who's going to go for it, don't you? Because I have a suspicion Liam Senior will overthink that game. What do you think?
I think he might. That was one that caught my eye. I mean, and he probably should like give it great care because the racehorse ground's going to be absolutely bouncing. Like this is, you know, they're pushing for playoff promotion in the Championship. They're playing very, very decent football for the league. They're in, and that, you know, they're trying to make it 3 or 4 promotions in a row, which is like actually ridiculous, really. Yeah, that's the one. I also quite like the look of Southampton. I wish it was at home for them. But Southampton at Fulham. Southampton are the form team of the Championship. It is just, they have not been beaten in ages. I'm trying to find the last time they were beaten. It was a long time ago. It was Jan 17th. They lost at home to Hull. And since then, they've won about 4 or 5. They've drawn a couple. They dispatched QPR 5-0 last week or 2 ago. They are flying. So I quite fancy Southampton for a little upset at Fulham.
Now, dare I ask, because what I'm looking at is Mansfield Town are well used to the hump, bump, and thump of whatever Arsenal are doing. Like that's their bread and butter. Crowding around goalkeepers, defensive football, launching it down the field is their stock in trade. And they're at home, and the pitch is probably not what Arsenal are used to. Am I Jason Donovaning here, Glenn? Dreaming a little dream here. I close my eyes and pull back the curtains. Shay, is there any hope in hell that Mansfield Town could be the cup set of the round?
I mean, if they're playing at home and we saw some of the state of the pitch, was it Grimsby last week or was it United and Grimsby that played each other?
Yeah.
The pitch was, I mean, horrendous. I loved it because I was like, hey, this is what happens in lower leagues that don't have billions of dollars to roll in some grass from outside inside, and all they did was bitch about it just because, like, oh, you know, our boots got dirty and we can't play in the mud because the ball doesn't move. I'm hoping that it rains and Arsenal has to, you know, all those prima donnas on that team have to go out and actually play classic English football. And
Martinelli,
Martinelli's going to be like, what is this? Like, I'm playing in mud. I can't, you know, spin the ball 50 miles an hour because it, you know, I lumped it and got stuck in somebody to run into it. But if they do it, I see just a really gritty, you know, 2-1 win. Like I said, they're going to probably fight them in the set pieces because Arsenal is going to try to bully them just like they've been doing everybody else. And I feel like Mansfield Town will pull the upset. I'll go 2-1 to Nolly pick there.
Man City, Newcastle, just in terms of Eddie Howe, if they're on a downward trend, is this a game that maybe for the Newcastle fans, because they're fairly loyal, it has to be said, but is that a game that they could turn on Eddie Howe and not necessarily kind of like banners trying to get him sacked, but certainly said, you know what, we won't mind if there's a change at the end of the season?
Yeah, Newcastle are in a tough position, aren't they? They've just been so poor in the league, and they're doing fine in the Champions League. Yeah, I don't think so, purely because it is Man City, right, Macca? So the second best team in the league, the team that has been generationally the best team in the Premier League in the last 5, 6, 7 years, however long it's been. It feels like forever at this point. I don't think Man City at home is the tie where fans are that's going to be the deciding factor. What it might do if they go out of another cup is just increase that pressure up a couple notches, right? Because the fans are frustrated. I think they're divided. I think there's a lot of Newcastle fans who are like, this is ridiculous. We won a trophy last year in the Champions League. You know, there's the kind of grounded supporters. But, I mean, similar to the Liverpool fan base in some ways, right? There's a bit of a split. I think that split's widening against Slot. It feels like week by week at this point. But there are fans who are just like, we're basically mid-table or whatever the hell they are in the Premier League. We're completely underperforming. Their recruitment was just poor. They just got done in by a really bad summer transfer window. That is fundamentally what happened. It just all fell apart. The whole Isak, Visser, all this stuff just torpedoed their preparation, their squad. It's just not as good as it was. It's just a disaster. So I don't think this will be the game that necessarily changes the opinion of many people, but it will keep pushing people towards being frustrated, because it's a great opportunity that if they could beat Man City, that would be a good way to release some of that pressure, I think.
West Ham, Brentford, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, decent. I mean, West Ham are a solid team. I think that's a tough game. We've had plenty of success against West Ham away from home in the Premier League the last few years, so I'm not scared of going there. We've won there plenty of times, but that's a game I think could go either way. I'd say that's a 50-50. All you'd say is West Ham probably have their sights on the Premier League, right? That's where they're at. So I think we should have enough in the tank. We've got a week's rest, basically, right? Because we're playing the late game on Monday. So we're going to basically have a week off in between. 6 days. Get rested up. I think we'll win. I think it'll be fine. But definitely don't look at that and think, oh, yeah, we'll breeze it. It's no, West Ham are a decent team. They're fighting under Nuno. But their eye has to be on the Premier League. They don't have time to faff about. With the greatest respect to the Cup, that is the only time where I can totally appreciate teams being priorities. It's not if you're looking at Champions League for me. It's not if you're looking at the top of the table. It's if you are on the absolute margins of relegation from the Premier League. I do appreciate it's probably not your year to win the FA Cup. You actually have to focus on the league. So I reckon we'll have enough to just kind of just push them out of the way. But we'll see. They're a solid team.
Was it Wigan a couple years ago that were in that same predicament where they end up winning the FA Cup and then never came back?
Just very quickly, I'm just going to ask you both this one question. Give me your opinion on it. There's a lot of non-Premier League teams left in this final shake-up. Is it possible with a coined draw we may see an FA Cup final with a non-Premier League team in it?
I would love it. It'd be something fun to watch. I think people would be shocked, but I mean, that's the magic of the FA Cup, what they always said. It gives everybody a chance.
So Port Vale against Newcastle
every year,
It's pretty cool, isn't it? 5 teams, I think. 5 non-Premier League teams.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah.
That's not bad. I mean, that's exciting. This is a really tasty draw. I think this is a really exciting draw. The FA Cup's been absolutely on fire this season. It's been great. And although it's a disgrace, they've scrapped the replays, etc., which is just really disappointing. With that said, nonetheless, it has carried the same magic, the same prestige. I feel like it's got more prestige. We said it before on the show than it has. It eroded in the kind of 2010s, but I think almost post-COVID, I think just the value of an FA Cup is just even bigger for teams. It's not a top 4 anymore. It's a top 6 in the Premier League. You know what I mean? This silverware is massive for any club. I think the League Cup is worth more than it was a couple years ago, because everyone, look at Newcastle last year. Everyone wants to win it. Can you imagine if Villa or Brentford? Look at the FA Cup and look at the teams that have won that in the last few years. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So, yeah, it's an exciting cup. It's the best cup in the world, in my opinion, and it's great. 5 teams, Macca. 5 teams have a chance to get to the final who are not in the Premier League. That's might be, I don't know if I'm saying unprecedented, but that's unusual. It's usually Premier League versus Premier League matchups with 2 championship teams left at this point. So it's great.
It's a fantastic cup competition, but it's nowhere near as good as the Suddington Under-12s Memorial Day tournament, which I won. So with that said, if you enjoyed our nonsense tonight and you want to follow more of it, then do this. Click on YouTube, go to the notifications and the bell and subscription button, and make sure you click all the relevant things. Facebook and Instagram, follow us on those, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Glenn and Shay, it's always fantastic to talk to you. It was an enjoyable night. Thank you so much. I can go to bed happy and probably with a bowl of Weetabix in my belly before. I like to have my breakfast before I go to sleep because I don't have time to eat when I wake up. It also keeps you regular. That's the important thing when you get older. It keeps you regular. Gentlemen, good luck with your games tomorrow, this weekend. And then we'll be back next week, probably with somebody who knows what they're doing, hosting. And then we'll be back, I think, to normal football the following weekend, March 14th, which will be coming up towards Paddy's Day, when everybody suddenly decides they're Irish and doesn't buy me any drink or food. Bastards. Have a good one, Shay. Have a good one, Glenn. Peace out. Here is some funky music.